Rod, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, mate. When one snowflake falls on London, 9 million snowflakes go berserk.
I know.
I'm not kidding, mate.
It's true. Listen, it's true. I mean, there was an inordinate amount of snow last night, much more than there normally is, I have to say. And I know that you guys in the hardy north have got probably much more snow to worry about than we have. But, I mean, you can't really avoid it. A lot of people have not gone to work this morning just because they don't fancy it.
I remember walking from Streatham to Broadcasting House when I was working for the BBC back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Walking, well, it must be about 6-7 miles through snowdrifts.
Yes.
In order to get to work.
Yes.
But I think people no longer feel they need to go to work anymore.
No.
I don't know if you saw a recent survey of young people. I think it was something like a quarter have decided that they have no intention of entering the job market.
Yes.
There's this sense of entitlement, about it. Well, I'm up here on the Northumberland border in County Durham, in the middle of the Pennines, and it's not that cold. I mean, it's zero. It's what we call winter.
Well, exactly right. I mean, proper cold, right, is when I was in Chicago once, and I went out of the hotel, and they actually had a warning in the hotel to say, please, we're not joking, just don't go out. It really is very, very cold. And it was something like -10 Fahrenheit, and you went out, and breathing into a scarf that I had around my neck made the scarf so hard it solidified. I could actually punch myself in the face and not feel it. That's how cold it was. And I mean, Lake Michigan was frozen. That was properly cold.
That's proper cold. Yeah, that's proper cold. Yeah.
But, here we are. We're at the start of the worst week for travelling, probably in the history of Britain. There's a general strike starting, basically, tomorrow, which is going to rope in the railways, rope in the NHS, rope in, ambulance drivers, paramedics, all of that, plus border forces going... I mean, they're all going on strike. What are we going to do?
I've been thinking about it, and I think that with capitalism, and particularly in our country, there's a reset every 40 or 50 years. And I think that's what's happening now, just as it happened in 1978 and just as it happened in 1929. And it's when... Because what we try to do with welfare capitalism is regulate it so that the people get a decent wage but industry still makes a profit. What's happened over the last 20 years is that wages have been falling in relation to, consumer goods. We are a low-waged economy, much as we were in 78, much as we were in 29. And this is across a whole bunch of professions and trades. And I think that this is another one of those great resets where people come out and ask for 20% pay rises, which they may well feel they're entitled to. I don't feel a huge anger towards any of the strikers, apart from the railway unions, whose targeting of Christmas weeks seems to be an act of utter spite towards, all the people who wish to see their families at Christmas.
Yes. Also, they're being very disingenuous about it, making out that we should be angry with the rail operating companies rather than with them. Well, the rail operating companies aren't very good at what they do either, but they're not the ones disrupting the trains.
Well, no, I agree. And you probably disagree with me on this, but I think we should have a state-run rail network.
No, listen, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, as long as it's better than it was when they ran it before.
Yeah, well, we both remember the glory days of British Rail, don't we, mate? And there are problems with the state running the rail network, and the lack of kind of entrepreneurial and innovation that you sometimes don't get with nationalised companies. Would we have seen the Javelin train in the southeast of England under nationalisation? I have my doubts about that. But still, the rail unions, led by people who have sympathies for North Korea and Russia, genuinely would have been what Margaret Thatcher called the enemy within.
Right.
But it's the spite directed at the rest of us that annoys me. That being said, we have had a low-wage economy for too long, and everyone knows it's a low-wage economy. Here's a way of it not being one. People asking for 20% pay rise.
Yes.
That's it's a natural occurrence, I think.
Well, perhaps. I mean, the trouble with the way that the railways were run before when they were nationalised was that the unions basically decided what was going to happen. The unions really ran the railways. The government never got anywhere near it. And
no, indeed.
All I hear about from people who know people who work on the railways is they don't do very much work. I was talking to somebody at the weekend whose best friend is a signalman. Apparently he only works 2 days a week and spends the rest of the time running a horse farm. You know, it's a bit like the old days of the printers. You know, they've all got other jobs because they don't have to work very much.
I'm sure that's true. I mean, it's also true that I mean, the reason our railways are in the state they're in is that when they were nationalised, when they were in public ownership, and before, there was no investment in them. You know, we have starved our rail networks of investment for more than 200 years. Well, about 200 years. You know, we just haven't put the money in. And we still have the infrastructure from, you know, the 1800s. It's a real problem.
And instead we put it all into HS2. Let's talk about England before we forget that the World Cup has once again
Can I run through the card on it?
Yes, please do. Please do.
Yeah, and I've been saying this for 4 years, and I suppose there is some consolation that a few of the football experts are now saying it themselves, which is that Gareth Southgate is not a very good manager. So you know, let's have a look at Saturday night's performance. We didn't take the game to the French in the first half. We played a containing game in the first half. Now, some teams play containing games because they have a very strong defence.
Yeah.
We don't. We have a very strong attack. And every time we attacked, there was no one in the penalty area to pick up those crosses from Bukayo Saka or from Kyle Walker or from whoever was putting the ball into the box. There was a complete absence in the penalty area. We had virtually no direct shots either on target or off target in the penalty area in that first half. You know, it was atrocious. Second half, we begin to get on top. We get a penalty. But the big difference between the two teams, people were saying that France and England are pretty evenly matched, and indeed they are. They're probably the two best teams in the tournament in terms of the players they've got.
Yes.
But the thing which gave us the edge was the bench, that we have far greater strength in depth than France. What did we therefore not do?
Substitute people. I know.
Substitute people.
I mean, did he bring... I can't remember if it was Grealish or Rashford that came on 2 minutes from the end. And you kind of go, what do you think he's going to do? You know.
Or Jack Grealish 1 minute before the end of 8 minutes of extra time. Worse than that, when he did make his substitution, who did he decide to take off? He had a look around his team and he thought, the player who's causing most trouble to the French is Saka. I think I'll take him off.
Yes.
Because it'll confuse them.
Yes.
I just do
Well, it
not
certainly confused everybody else.
It confused everybody else. He cannot react to adverse conditions in the game. He cannot react.
My impression of it, it's quite simply, was this, that the French wanted it more. They were bullies, which is entirely how you win tournaments and how you win football matches. And England are suffering, in my view, from an attack of overly nice behaviour. You know, actually, when I put out a tweet at the weekend, which has now reached 1 million hits, because I was critical of Harry Kane, and of course, that's something you can't do. The front page of The Sun on Saturday called him a hero. I'm going, sorry? Why is he a hero? He missed a penalty. He's paid to hit the target. He didn't even hit the target. And the bottom line is that they're too nice. And somebody actually tweeted me, and this is when you know that it's all gone horribly wrong for the football fans of England. This guy said, I want my sons to look up to Gareth Southgate, whether it's doing the right thing or winning the World Cup. Really? Sorry?
Yeah.
You know.
Totally wrong. Totally wrong. But the trouble is that's the view that the Football Association have as well. He has been... He has had the finest crop of England players, I think, possibly in history. He managed to get us relegated from the Nations League with the worst series of results since the 1920s. You know? He threw away an astonishing opportunity against Italy in the Euros final. That is a game we could and should have won. He was way, way, way too late in reacting to changes which his opposite number, Mancini, had already put in place. He failed again in the semi-final against Croatia, again failing to react in time. And his performance on Saturday was better. Now, Harry Kane, you know, that ball from the penalty, I think, has ended up somewhere near the Iranian coastline. I mean, it wasn't even close, was it?
No.
But
nowhere near.
Nowhere near. But in fairness to Kane, you know, he scores 9 out of 10 penalties, and therefore statistically 1 time in 10 he's going to miss.
I get all that, but it's not just about the penalty, is it? It's about the whole thing. I mean, somebody said to me the other day, he may well have scored that penalty, and then we could have gone on to extra time and lost on penalties. You know, that can happen. It was just the nature of the way that, you know, France just seemed to do what they wanted. You could argue the referee was a little bit biased, but, you know, in the end, they were the ones bullying the England players off the ball.
I don't think the ref was biased. I just think he was a half-wit.
Yes.
And it's also true that brilliant player though Bukayo Saka is, and he is, he does go down pretty easily. You know, he goes down quicker than George Michael in a public lavatory, as one might say.
Well, you may well possibly
allegedly.
Say that. Yes.
Allegedly.
Yes.
But no, it was the game was mismanaged.
Yes.
You know, and all the big games that Gareth Southgate has come up against, he has mismanaged them. You know, I don't believe that we should win every tournament we enter, but I do believe that with these players, we've had a chance to win 2, perhaps 3 tournaments, and it's been blown away by bad management.
Yes.
I would like him to go and run a whelk stall in Grimsby for the next couple of years. No, I don't. It
wouldn't be a top division whelk stall either.
It would be a League One whelk stall. Yeah. You know, because of course his previous, he was okay with the England youth-ish. He was pretty awful at Middlesbrough, and that's his only other experience.
And that's all he's ever done. And he's up against somebody like Didier Deschamps, you know, who's coached some quite interesting teams in the past.
Yeah, Didier Deschamps is a class act, no question about that. And I also thought Deschamps was very generous in his post-match assessment, you know, where he said that France were maybe a bit lucky at times. But no, the problem has been is that the kind of Southgate mentality has a stranglehold not only on the FA, but also it's a bit like wokeism.
Yeah,
but it also has a stranglehold on nearly all the reporters who report about that they're all his friends. And he seems to be a really nice bloke, Southgate.
I'm sure
he's done a few things which are good. He's managed to break down the divisions between the players from the rival Championship tier, the rival Premier League teams. He's done that quite well. He's given them a sense of purpose. He's done that quite well. But he has no tactical sense.
Yeah. And he's not a winner. That's the point. The point is, I mean, it's all very well that he's a nice man and he's very pleasant company in a very boring, dull sort of way. But if you look at all the successful sporting individuals and teams, they're not very nice because you have to not be very nice to win.
No, that's right. No, they're usually a bit of a bastard, if you can put it like that.
Exactly.
And I don't doubt that he's an intelligent, well-spoken bloke. But I think, you know, I mean, there is the issue of the knee, which has become an absurdity. Yeah. When England take it and America doesn't, you know that something is. But it's parroted these days by ITV and the BBC when they're commentating on it. This is to show inclusivity. No, it's not. It wasn't to show inclusivity at the start. It was to talk about Black Lives Matter. That is where it comes from. Right. Black Lives Matter, which has since changed its name to Buy Larger Mansions, by the way.
Yeah, but it also comes from Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick used to take the knee during the national anthem because traditionally in the NFL you stand for the national anthem. He took the knee as a demonstration against the United States of America. So if they really want to do it properly, they should kneel during the national anthem, which would then be an attack on their own country, which presumably would then lead to them all being fired.
Yeah, well, do you know, I think there's some people who think that. I was down at my local shops talking to an old lad who's a Sunderland supporter, and I said, will you be watching the England game? This was before the Senegal game. Yeah. He said, no, I didn't even know it was on. He said, I'm not watching that shower. They disrespect my country.
Yes. Interesting.
And I think there's quite a few people.
There is a lot of that. There wasn't much England flaggery on display, that's for sure. I only saw maybe 2 cars in the whole couple of weeks.
No, but the worst thing is that there were no spiteful chants at the French. You know, how can we, as a nation, play France in a game of football, and no one is singing, if it wasn't for the English, you'd be Krauts.
Yes.
How can that not happen? You know?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how it cannot happen, because the only people who could afford to go and watch them in Qatar were rather well-dressed, rather well-furnished, shall we say, England fans. They weren't the normal Commonwealth Garden England fan. They were people who'd shelled out about 10 grand per game, I think. But there we are. Listen, before I let you go, we must talk about your centre ground piece in the Sunday Times. Very good. Starmer huffs and puffs for the centre ground, but he isn't going to find many voters there.
Yeah, you see, I think it was a mistaken piece by David Aronovich, who is a very, very elegant and talented writer, and wrong about almost everything that has ever happened, including the Iraq. He still thinks that weapons of mass destruction will be found in Iraq.
Yeah, they're still looking. Yeah, and he's still looking
just for David. It's an illusion that the voters are moving towards the centre ground. If you look at issues like wokeism, the country is hugely against, and the opinion polls support this. 70% of people don't think that men who transition to being women should play against women in sport. People don't agree with decolonising curricula. They don't agree with any of that. They're very hard line on it. By the same token, they also quite like the idea of nationalising the utilities and a higher rate of income tax. So in both senses, the public, and when you add in green issues as well, that ramps it up even more. On most issues, the public is far more radical than are either of our two major parties, both to the left and to the right. And there is no indication that people want a kind of soft Jeremy Huntish consensus. No. None whatsoever.
No, exactly right. Which takes us rather nicely back to England. And it's all the same argument in the end. Rod Liddle, thank you very much indeed.